So beautiful to be together and just to share the beautiful news of the morning, which is Puja Swamiji's about to get on a flight. At the airport, just boarding shortly, there was a beautiful meeting with the president in the morning. And now he's on his way, as Sadhna just said. So, as we feel his beautiful presence getting closer and closer as the moon gets fuller and fuller. And I wanted to talk today. We've been speaking yesterday and in our general theme of how do we emerge as that light that we are. Our spiritual paths are not about becoming something else. It's not, oh, I will go to a retreat, or I'll go to a mandir, or I will get a mantra, and then I will become a different person. It's not that. Who we are divine. Again, unquestionably. Doesn't matter which particular scripture is your favorite, which mantra is your favorite, which divine manifestation of the divine is your favorite. We're given in so many different ways. Reminders, teachings, that who we are is divine. Who we are is not separate from God. Who we are is not separate from all of the qualities of the divine. That infinite nature, that love, that truth, that perfection, that wholeness, that fullness. When we chant Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnat Purnamudachyate, Purnasya Purnamadaya, Purnameva Vashishyate. That's just one of the so many ways that we are reminded in the scriptures of how divine we are, right? I mean, that, the capital T that, the divine that, is of course infinite. If it weren't infinite, it wouldn't be God. I mean, if it just exists only over here in a box, it's clearly not God, then it's just some possession of ours, some item of ours. If it's infinite, if it's God, then it's infinite. If it's infinite, it's divine. So that, the capital T that, this is what that mantra means, this capital T that, the divine that, the supreme that, is whole, is infinite, is full, is complete. And this, which has been created by that, is also therefore divine, whole, complete, full, perfect. That all of the qualities of that out of which we have been made are the qualities in us. It's like if I've got a big lump of clay, and the clay is, say, this percentage carbon, and this percentage hydrogen, and this percentage nitrogen, and this percentage iron, and whatever else goes into clay. Well, every piece that I'm going to make out of that clay is similarly, therefore, going to have that much carbon, that much hydrogen, that much iron, that much nitrogen. The only difference, of course, is that my lump of clay would get smaller with every piece that I make out of it, whereas because God is infinite, God stays infinite no matter how many of us are created by and of that divine. But the characteristics of that from which we are made are the same characteristics of each of us. So that's this fundamental truth that we are told in so many different ways in our scriptures, in our teachings. And yet we forget it. We don't live like that. We live in a way where we are so identified as this small self, this self that needs that or needs this, or only will be happy with that, broken unless this. And so we're living in this illusory self. And so I want to talk today, over the next few satsangs, we'll look at different aspects that lead to this illusion. Like, why do we live in such ignorance? If we are full and whole and complete and divine, why do we feel anxious and depressed and upset and yearning, and we have desires, and why do we think we would be so much happier if we just had more money, or just looked a different way, or just could buy that new type of phone, or had this type of house? Or why do we misunderstand who we are so much? And of course, as I mentioned last night, it's the workings of the mind. And we are, with every moment, with every thought, we are handicapping our own minds. We literally are programming our minds to forget who we are. And the biggest way that most of us do that is through our inclination toward negativity. And this isn't new. There's something about the makeup of the divine Leela that somehow, in the same way that we've been created to forget who we are and now have to remember it, we also somehow have been created, and scientists, psychologists know this, that just the human brain will spend a lot more time looking at something, listening to something, watching something that is negative than something that's positive. It's tragic, because of course negativity just makes us feel worse, but nonetheless we seem neurologically programmed to have an inclination toward negativity, which just means we need to shift that, bring it up. Just need to bring it up. Water's inclination is to go down, but we all bring water up. I mean, whether it's just carrying a glass of water up to your room or using pumps to bring it up so that you can bathe on the 15th floor of a building. Whatever it may be, there's lots of tools and ways to bring water up, even though its inclination is to go down back to the earth. So in the same way, we just need to figure out what are the tools to bring us up. And first of all, how do we free ourselves of all of these habits that keep bringing us down? And if you look at our negative emotions, our negative thoughts, our negative habits, they tend to fall in a few broad categories. Number one, we'll call anger and grudges. Number two, we'll call judgment. And this is true, by the way, toward others. It's also true toward the self. So number one is our anger, grudges. Number two is judgment. We're constantly judging. Number three is this jealousy, envy, sense of lack in me. And we're going to look at those today in terms of how we can free ourselves. And what they all do, the core for all of these, is that we always have a choice. We forget we have a choice. When we're angry, we think, well, how could I be anything other than angry? Of course I'm angry. When we're judging, we think, well, of course. I mean, how could you not notice? How could you not get upset by this? How could you not prefer this to that? We forget we have a choice. And it reminds me of when I first moved to India. And one of the things I decided in the very, very early days, long before I took sannyas, was I was going to wear saris. They just always seemed very, very beautiful to me. And everybody would say, oh, you know, they're very, very difficult to wear. But, you know, I was a scientist, and I figured, okay, you know, I mean, I think at that time the population of India was, I don't remember what it was, but say 600 million, 700 million, whatever it was, 25 years ago. I remember thinking, there's hundreds of millions of Indian women who tie saris every day, many of whom are uneducated. It can't be rocket science. I've got to be able to figure this out. If hundreds of millions of women, many of whom with no education, are able to do it, I must be able to figure it out. So I started wearing saris, and people like Rekha Ben and Tarangini Ben, who were there in the early days, will remember I tied them very poorly, unless I had one of your help to get into them. But that never deterred me, and so I would always tie saris and wander off. And what would happen is that Indian women, not the ones I knew and loved, but random strangers, would actually come up to me and fix my sari. Like, I'd be walking through the marketplace, and random Indian women, and this was before I would just do this with the piece up here, but when I actually would nicely, you know, fold it and pin it. And they would come up to me, and the places where a sari goes wrong are in the pleats, so it's either here or it's here. And they would come up and they would literally stick their hands in my clothes, into my underwear, or into my bra, and they would yank and they would fix it, and then they would, you know, pat it all back. And then they would go on about their merry way. And I remember the first time that happened thinking, oh my God, that woman just stuck her hand in my underwear. I've been violated. And I was shocked, you know. In the West, we've got this thing that we call space, social space, personal space, and people are not supposed to get into it, especially when you don't know them. And whether it was physically sticking their hands into my undergarments to fix my clothes, or whether it was in conversation. We'd sit in the dining area and people would say, you know, are you married? Do you have children? What do you mean you don't have children? Don't you want to have children? What do your parents think about the fact that you don't want to have children? You know, and you think, well, if I had hired you to be my therapist, maybe we would have this conversation. But, you know, I don't even know your name, and we're just sitting next to each other having lunch. And really, that isn't exactly any of your business. And it wasn't just about me. I mean, this is something that every Westerner who comes to the ashram says to me. Why does everybody want to know about my marital status, my plans to have children, you know, how much money I make? You know, these are things I don't even tell my therapist. Why does everyone think it's their business? And I realized very early on that nobody was actually trying to be rude. People were not trying to invade my space, but rather it's a culture in which everyone is family. And in the same way that you say Bhai and Ben, or Didi and Bhaiya, or uncle and auntie, you know, in the same way that everybody was calling me either, you know, Beti or Ben or auntie or whatever, that in the same way that I was being given these very, very cute suffixes to my name, that I was being adopted. That I wasn't being violated, I was being adopted, that India was adopting me. And that the same thing that an Indian mother would do for her daughter when she walked out of the house was exactly what these women were doing for me. That any Indian woman would not think twice about sticking her hands into her own daughter's underwear and fixing her sari if it was a mess when she walked out. And that they were doing the same to me, that I had been adopted. And that I had a choice. I could either move through my new world with a mindset that said I was being violated, which made every day difficult. I mean, you'd go to sit in the arati and, say I'd be sitting here and then the next person would be sitting, say, where this plant is. Now, to an American mindset, there's no room between us. No space. Sorry, somebody's going to have to find another space somewhere else. But to an Indian, well, that's a space. And they'll come and they'll sit in it. And if it means that their knees are on your knees, or their baby is in your lap, well, so be it. Or their purse is in your lap, so be it. That in the same way that with our family members, you wouldn't think twice about squeezing into a space and being kind of all over your family member. That this was a culture that adopts. And my ability to either thrive and expand or suffer and contract was going to be singularly dependent upon my ability to realize that I was adopted, not violated. And it's just a mindset. People kept putting their hands in my underwear. They kept asking inappropriate questions. They kept squeezing into non-spaces. But my mindset had changed. And instead of feeling like, who do you think you are? My mindset became, oh, auntie. Or, oh, uncle. And it was such a beautiful opportunity to try to adopt them in the same way that they had so readily and effortlessly adopted me. And I begin with this because you can think about how miserable it would be to move through a world where you're constantly feeling violated. And yet how beautiful it is to move through a world where you're constantly feeling adopted. Everything on the outside is the same. Nobody changed how they treated me. All that changed was my narrative. Now let me give you another example. This one is a made-up example, but they work just as well. I've discovered that the mind loves stories. And if you don't give it one, it will make one up. So before I explained to my mind that I had been adopted, the mind made up the story of violation. These people were rude. But I gave it a different story. It was happy. When we don't have stories, we make them up. And so I'm a very, very strong proponent in what I call mental creative writing. So let's imagine that you're driving down the road and you're minding your own business. You're being a very good, defensive, safe driver. You're driving down the freeway and suddenly some guy cuts you off in such a way that you end up having to slam on the brakes, threatening your life. They then end up weaving through traffic, again back into your lane. I mean, really creating a dangerous situation. Your sympathetic nervous system is now in overdrive. Your heart is pumping, your hands are sweating, and you think, idiot, who do you think you are? Did you not see us? I mean, we're all angry, we're upset, maybe we honk. If we're those types of people, maybe we make some not so nice hand gestures, maybe we use not so nice words. We've created a story. The story is this guy is insensitive, is rude. I was just minding my own business. I am an injured party here. I haven't been physically injured, thankfully, but I am an injured party here. Now imagine that I told you that this guy had just gotten a phone call, that his son was in a critical accident and had 3 minutes left to live at a hospital 3 miles down the road. And that the doctors had called and said, if you want to see your son alive, you're going to get here in the next 3 minutes. Now see how your internal experience of that guy changes? Now you'd want to clear the freeway for him, right? You'd tell everybody, get out of the way. Maybe you'd follow him to the hospital and go and, at least buy him a sandwich or see if there was something you could do for him. So see where, in just a very simple shift in the narrative, and the truth is we'll never know. In the vast majority of cases, we will never know the story. Even with people we know. Why was someone rude to us? Why did someone do this? We think we know the answer. We make up a story. Well, they are like this, or they are full of ego, or they are rude, or they are that. We make up stories. But those stories are no more true than this guy on the road being a callous, rude, reckless idiot. We have no idea what someone's story is. All we have is the ability over our own minds. Because the truth really is, for your mind and your life, it doesn't actually matter what the guy's story is. All that matters is that you can tell your mind a story that keeps your heart feeling peace. And this is why I'm a very, very staunch advocate for making up stories in your mind. Just give your mind stories. Somebody's obnoxious to you. Tell yourself a story. They must have had, a fight with their spouse that morning, or maybe they got some bad news. Maybe they didn't sleep well. Maybe they're struggling with something that you have no idea about. Whatever it may be, make up stories. Because the truth is, our job here on earth is not the Supreme Court. We're not the ones dishing out karmic dues to people. So it's not up to us, and by Supreme Court, I don't mean the one sitting in Washington, I mean the supreme, the actual supreme, like divine court. We're not the ones dishing out karmic payback. It's not up to us to figure out why someone is being the way they are. All that is up to us is to give our mind the opportunity to live in peace, to live in love. And if you have to make up stories, so be it. I make up stories all day long. Because there's always a story. Sometimes you know it, sometimes you don't. But give the mind one before it makes up its own story. Someone you care about does something that seems really insensitive, and where does the mind go? They don't care about me. They don't love me as much as I love them. I'll never get that love that I really need. I keep trying, I keep putting in so much energy, so much time, but they just keep forgetting, they ignore me, they pretend I don't exist. I'm never gonna feel that love. Just tell yourself a different story. They love me so much. But they're so afraid to share it because, when they were growing up, They were taught not to express feelings, or maybe growing up they shared their feelings with someone who betrayed them or embarrassed them, shamed them in some way. And so they're being self-protective, but they love me so much. Whatever it is, just give yourself the permission, the opportunity to live in peace, because until and unless God comes down, hands you a notebook and pen, and says, I need you to keep track of who's doing what and why, and who deserves what and when. Until and unless God does that, you can be pretty sure that it's not your job to figure out who deserves to have a grudge held against them, who deserves your anger, who deserves forgiveness. It's not your job. Your only job is to move closer and closer to freedom. And in order to find freedom, we have to be prepared to let go of that anger and of these grudges. And of course, the first question that always arises is, well, what if someone does something really horrible? Aren't there things that are unforgivable? And this conflates two different definitions. There are things that people do that are wrong. Undeniably, objectively, unequivocally wrong. That's not the same as unforgivable. There are things that people do for which they will suffer karmic consequences. Absolutely. Fortunately, that's not our job. Fortunately, the law of karma is such that it doesn't require us to keep tabs. When people do wrong things, hurtful things, they abuse, they lie, they cheat, they betray, whatever it may be, they get the karmic consequences. Forgiveness is an entirely separate subject. But in our minds, we have confused them, and we think that somehow forgiveness is the gate that absolves somebody of what they've done. And as long as we keep the gate closed, they will have to suffer. But the minute we open the gate, somehow they are now absolved of what they've done. And that isn't true at all. Forgiveness has nothing to do with absolving somebody. Absolving somebody is not even in our power. Forgiveness is what we do because we deserve to be free. That's the only reason we forgive. Because we deserve to be free. And not forgiving is literally, as I always say, it is literally offering up your most precious thing, your peace, your joy, your freedom, your life, on the altar of someone else's ignorance, ego, anger, fear, whatever they were operating under. If I don't forgive and I say stay stuck, I am literally offering them my life on the altar of their ignorance. And why in the world would we do that? They've already hurt us. Why in the world would we then hand them yet another minute of our life? But it's what we do. Forgiveness is the only way for us to become free. Forgiveness is what makes us recognize the only thing in my control here is my heart. There's a beautiful beautiful analogy that I share a lot about this. It makes it really easy to think about. And it's the analogy of, imagine that you've just bought a brand new white couch. It's my favorite way of talking about forgiveness. So imagine you've just bought a brand new white couch and you put it in your living room and your friend comes over and you make the friend sit on the couch. And then you go in your kitchen and with your own hands with love, you make your friend a cup of coffee or tea and you give it to them. And that friend then spills it all over the couch. Okay? Maybe on purpose, maybe by accident, doesn't matter. They then stand up and walk out of your house. No explanation, no nothing. They spill it and then they walk out. What's the first thing you're going to do? Right? First thing you're going to do?
I didn't even say sorry.
They didn't say sorry. They did nothing. They just walked out. Now it's your house, your couch. What's the first thing you're going to do? Clean the couch. Raise your hand if the first thing you're going to do is chase that person down the street.
But not to be mean.
Not to be rude.
Yeah, no, to find out what happened, what is going on.
So, if you do that, you end up with a permanently stained couch. So, she raises a good point though, which I'll come back to in a minute, because if they clearly seem, if they're sobbing, or they've, grabbed their heart like they've had a heart attack or something, then yes, obviously you want to follow them out of the house. But otherwise, the very first thing we need to do is clean the couch because we understand coffee, tea stains. And we'll deal with this person later. We'll find out what happened. But that if I don't clean that stain, it's gonna set. What many of us do, though, is we don't clean the couch. We run after them, not in the compassion that Lori mentions, as in, oh my God, are you okay? Did you just, have something horrible happen? But to try to get them to come back and clean the couch. You get back here. You made this mess. You hurt me. Now you come back and you apologize, you say you're sorry, you make it better, you bow at my feet, you whatever we are wanting of that person. You fix this thing. You made the mess, you fix it. And if that person doesn't, the next thing a lot of us do is we just leave the stain there. Because we start to sort of identify as it. We are the ones whose couch that guy spilled the coffee on and then walked away. Like, I was hurt. Look what he did to me. And I was so nice, like with my own hands. I had made him this beautiful cup of coffee. But you think that festering stain that's got now, bugs and bacteria and worms and a horrible stench, it's in your house. You're the one who has to live with it. You're the one who has to sit there every day. They've gone on. They don't even remember. Until every once in a while, somebody will tell them, oh, I was at this person's house and they showed me that stain. And then the guy's like, yeah, God, they can't get over anything. Amazing. 5 years ago that happened. So we are the one who keeps suffering. So forgiveness is essentially cleaning that stain on our couch. It's literally saying, I deserve to be free. Whatever it was that inspired you to do that, that's your story. And sure, if it's something that, I can help you with, I'm happy to help you with. But I'm not going to let it hurt my heart. going to move through my world 24/7 with a stain that I let set and fester just because I was so determined to wait until you got back to fix it. So that's why we let go. Many of you know a lot of my story, and I won't go into all of it here, but just to share a beautiful moment with Puja Swamiji when I had first gotten there and shared with him the challenges, the difficulties, the trauma I had experienced, and why I was moving through my world with fear and with anger and suffering in so many ways. And he looks at me, and you all know he's an ocean of compassion and love. But he didn't say, oh, you poor thing, come and put your head in my lap and let me just, none of it. He looked at me and he said, are you going to take that to the grave?
Yeah, I do.
So I was only 25. He says, you're going to take it to the grave? Yeah, it's in my book. And he made me give it to Ganga. He said, you're waiting for someone to come in and draw the line and tell you you can be done. You can let it go. He said, no one will. It's up to you. And he made me give it to Ganga. And each of us has that capacity. It just requires you to decide enough. Enough. I've carried this baggage around enough. It's heavy. It's annoying. It prevents me from moving through my life freely. I mean, imagine that you had a 90-pound backpack on. Right? I mean, anybody who's ever gone backpacking or even just carried, a heavy shoulder bag. Think about how beautiful it feels to, at the end of the day, get the backpack off. Take off the shoulder bag. Right? There's this sense of, well, let go. Let go of that baggage you're carrying. It's not worth it. Whatever anyone's done to you. Your freedom is only in your hands. And then we move into judgment. And judgment is really interesting because on the one hand, we have this beautiful energy center, the Agya Chakra, the energy center literally of the power of discrimination that enables us to see truth from falsehood. We practice subtlety. We practice discrimination, understanding. I mean, those who do yoga, who do meditation, it's all practices of subtlety. Subtlety of breath, subtlety of energy, subtlety of noticing the fluctuations of the mind stuff. It's all practices of subtle awareness. And so judgment, on some level, is something that we are supposed to have. We're supposed to be able to be subtly aware between differences. And yet, we are not supposed to judge. And it's a very beautiful practice that we begin in our meditation and then, of course, bring into the rest of the world. It's a lot easier in meditation because in meditation, the things that we are noticing, is the breath short? Is it long? Is it deep? Is it shallow? Where is my mind? And then we bring it back. It wanders and we bring it back. Where does the breath seem stuck in the body? Where does it flow freely? Where does it not flow freely? So we notice subtly. We hold it in our awareness. We watch it shift, but we don't bring any value judgment to it. So we're not saying good breath, bad breath. We're not saying good mind, good thought. We're just noticing. Just noticing. And it's a wonderful practice for the rest of our lives because judgment kills us. We move through the world constantly judging. We judge ourselves all the time. Wake up in the morning, you look at yourself in the mirror, there's always judgment. Either, wow, you look so beautiful this morning. Or, oh my God, what's happened to you? Or we notice pimples, or we notice wrinkles, or we notice more gray hair, or we notice that we have got suddenly, more rings of fat in a place that we were not interested in having more rings of fat, or we notice that we've lost weight and we weren't looking to lose weight, or whatever it may be. But we begin the day usually with judgment right away. Just looking at ourselves. We judge the day, the weather. We judge our sleep, good night's sleep, bad night's sleep. We judge the upcoming day. It's going to be a good day. Today I get to do this. Oh, it's going to be a bad day. I've got to do this. And we just start the judgments right away as the day goes on. And it primes us and gets us all ready to judge everyone as we move through the world. Everyone around us, how they're acting, what they're doing. And judgment does two things, both of which are seriously problematic. The first is it separates us from others. So I am the judge, and you are the object I am judging. So you're this thing, and I'm judging you. So we are now obviously separate. I'm analyzing you. Right? It's like you go to the supermarket and you pick up an apple and you're like, oh, yeah, all right, it looks kind of good. It's not too shiny, which is good. It means it's more likely organic. It's round, but oh, there's this mushy part. All right, I'll take a different one. It's fine to do that with apples. But it's not fine to do that with people in our environment. But we're constantly doing that with people around us. Are they living, looking, behaving, dressing, speaking, acting up to our standards? How we want them to be? And if not, we get angry and we try to change them. Or if we don't have a relationship with them where we actually can change them, we just wish they would be different. And our minds get all tangled up in wishing they should be different. So that's one major problem of judgment. The other major problem of judgment is it never stops. I mean, my mind has never said to me of its own accord, boy, that was really thorough. I think I can be done now. We've done a good job assessing everybody around me. I think I'm done. Never. It never stops. It just keeps going. Yourself, what you said, how you look, how others are, what they say, what they're doing, what's going to happen. It never ends. Now imagine that you had a roommate, or a housemate, or you rented out a room in one of those Airbnb things, or whatever it may be. You've got a house guest who talks non-stop, 24/7, always negative, always, seems to be able to magically walk through your closed and locked bedroom door, and is always saying to you, did you see that? Did you notice that? My God, how did you let that go by? That person was really rude. Look at how this person is being. God, she got fat. Boy, what is he doing there? God, she looks so beautiful. You really should, try to do what she's doing. You look really ugly next to her. God, did you notice that? How is he speaking to her? Oh, I wonder, Agya Chakra chala rahe nahi? I mean, could you imagine? All day long. You're in the shower. This person is in the bathroom with you, talking to you through the shower curtain. You're going to the toilet. They're yelling at you through the bathroom door. Non-stop. You would try as fast as you could to get that person out of your house. And if you couldn't get them out, you'd leave them the house. You'd run away. You'd be like, fine, stay, take it all. I'm getting out. And yet, this is what we've got going on in our minds. All the time. All the time. And we welcome it. We lay out the welcome mat, we fluff up its pillow next to us in bed. Lie down in bed, happy to hear it talking while we try to drift off to sleep. It's the first voice we hear in the morning. I mean, could you imagine if that were actually a living human being in your room or your house? Even those of us who tend to be very non-violently inclined would surely start to have murderous fantasies. That's the voice of judgment. And this is why we have to get it to stop. Because it is taking over our lives. It's no wonder we have trouble meditating. It's no wonder we have trouble concentrating. It's no wonder that we are stressed. It's no wonder that we've got conflict in our relationships. Every time we're about to meet someone, that person is coming with us going, do you remember the last time you met them, what they said to you? My God, they were so mean. Do you remember that? I'm sure they're going to be just as mean this time. You better be really careful because this guy is really rude. Every time. So we have to stop the judgment. And the only way to stop it is through, number one, in our meditations. It begins with a practice in meditation, because in meditation we develop that ability to just be the witness, to just notice, a short breath, a long breath, a warm room, a cool breeze, a mind that's moving around, a mind that's quieting down. It's just witnessing, just noticing. It's what I was speaking about last night, that awareness. It's just being aware. And as you're able to then carry that into the world, you find that you simply notice. But you notice without any emotional attachment. And you notice it in the same way that when you walk through, let's say, a fruit orchard, or the fruit section of a grocery store, that you're able to see and to notice and appreciate all the different types of fruit, or all the different types of flowers if you're walking by a flower garden. But you're not wishing that one type would be like the other type. That you're not, peeling a banana and wishing that it would be juicy like an orange. There's a beautiful virtue called equanimity, samta we say. And it's a really critical virtue. And it's something that's emphasized a lot in the scriptures, to have samta, equanimity. It doesn't mean we are detached. It doesn't mean we don't care. It doesn't mean we are blind and we don't notice. It simply means that we are able to be present with oranges and apples and bananas and roses and jasmine and sunflowers. And it doesn't mean that we don't have any preference. It doesn't mean that we don't prefer people to be a certain way. It doesn't mean that I don't prefer a certain type of fruit over another type of fruit. But it means that the presence of the type of fruit that I don't prefer, or the presence of the type of words or actions or experiences that I don't prefer, that they are not enough to unroot me. They're not enough to pull me out of my anchoring, my grounding, my centering. That's what equanimity is. And so in our meditation, we practice just being aware, noticing, just noticing, witnessing. And in our life, if you notice yourself judging, if you notice that you've got a judgment, literally just in your mind, if it's a negative judgment, just substitute it. Because in that moment, it's very difficult to turn a judgment into just noticing. The noticing, the awareness, the unattached awareness is a practice that you should just move through your lives with. But if you notice, oh, there I am judging, my mind is full of this negative judgment, just substitute it. Substitute it for something positive. So if you're talking to somebody and they're talking in, say, a tone of voice that really bothers you, well, instead, just notice maybe how beautiful their hair is. Or notice maybe how beautiful the light is shining behind them. It doesn't necessarily have to be about that person, but it's nicer if it can be. Just substitute something positive for something negative. And try to go as deep as you can. So them having nice hair is a very shallow, nice thing. It's better than something negative. But if you know them, okay, in this moment they're talking in a negative tone of voice, or they're being negative, or they're being rude to you. Maybe they're criticizing you. Maybe they're saying something you don't want to hear. Well, instead of being judgmental, just substitute it for something about them that you love. And if you don't know them well, then just choose something superficial. Maybe they have a nice pair of shoes, whatever it may be. But just find something positive in that moment about that person, to shift the attention. And start this practice of just being aware. Without judgment, just noticing. And this brings us back also to what I was saying before about creative writing. Because immediately the judgment is always negative. So it's always going to say, oh, this person is a bad person, or they are rude, or they are full of ego, or they are wrong, or they are this, or they are that. Well, make up a different story. Make up a different story about what's going on for them. And in terms of judgment for the self, which also happens so frequently, that commentator in our mind is judging others, and judging us all the time. So instead of that, you have to give it. You have to give it another mantra. And that mantra is a mantra of how full you are, how divine you are. Okay, you may have a pimple on your nose. You may have a new wrinkle or 10. You may have different shapes of the body that are no longer what you had been hoping for in that morning. You may have just said something that the mind is thinking, oh. Something may have happened to you, through you. You may have done something that you don't feel proud of, or that didn't go the way you'd like it to go. Instead of allowing the mind to just perseverate, to just keep getting stuck in that over and over again, just ruminating on it over and over again, instead of that, give yourself another mantra, just a different shift. If you've got a mantra that Pujya Swamiji's given you, chant that. If there is a mantra that appeals to you a lot, that you really love, chant that. If not, a very, very simple and beautiful one, which is one that we do with meditation a lot, is just so hum. So hum. I am that. I am that. That capital T, that we spoke about in the Purnima mantra. That capital T, that. I am that. I'm not separate. I'm not separate from the perfection of the universe, from the wholeness, the fullness. I am that. And whenever the mind goes, oh, you're stupid, oh, you're this, oh, you're that, oh my God, I can't believe you said that, can't believe you did that, what will people think, you are this, you are that. Just so hum, so hum, so hum. I am that. I am that. I am one. I am one with the Creator and one with the creation. Just remember that. Because our minds are with us all the time, like that annoying roommate. And so we have to figure out a way to get them to be, as I was saying last night, tools in our hands of where we want to go, not where we don't want to go. I mean, imagine that you are, let's say you are a recovering alcoholic, or just you're someone who never drinks and believes that we should not drink. Now you've got a roommate who all day long is saying, oh, just have one, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Taking their alcohol, putting it in front of your nose, drinking it in front of you. Come on, come on, come on, come on. You won't be happy unless you do. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Well, either eventually you'll give in and then you'll regret it, or you will just spend all day long miserably fighting this guy, unnecessarily. Don't let the mind take us where we don't want to go. You know, I always say our thoughts are vehicles, and they take us places. And we would never get in a vehicle that was going somewhere other than where we wanted to go. If you're sitting at the airport and you're at your gate, but before your flight arrives to board, there's another plane and it's just final boarding, and the lady at the gate agent is saying, okay, final call, get on board. Well, you're not going to get on just because it's there, just because she's yelling and saying, come on, come on, come on, get on. You know that's not my plane. You're going to wait. If you're standing at a bus stop and a bus slows down and even stops, but you see the sign, it's not going where you want to go, you're not going to get on. You'll just do a, namaste. And in the same way, when our thoughts come that are taking us to negativity, that are taking us to misery, that are taking us to suffering, just don't get on them. That's where we've got our mantras. It's where we've got the power of japa, power of God's name. Or just something as simple as love. I mean, literally, you could also just say love. I love you, I love you. Who is the you? I love you, God. I love you, this tree. I love you, universe. Just, I love you. It immediately, just say it now in your mind. Just say, I love you. Thinking about whoever you love, just, I love you. Feel the way your whole inner being shifts. Suddenly. So just allow the mind to not jump onto vehicles, going where you don't want to go. Get on the one that you do. And lastly, it's a beautiful practice that we have in our Indian tradition of saying Namaste. And what I love about it is, it literally means the divine in me is bowing to the divine in you. Which means, number one, I have to be in touch with the divine in me. So I must anchor into my divine being in order to do Namaste to you. It's not just Namaste, 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 Namaste. To really do Namaste, I have to anchor into my divine presence. And then I am bowing not to what you've just said or done, whether I like it or don't like it, but to the divinity in you. And then the last piece that I love is, well, that divine in me is the same as the divine in you. So I am literally bowing to myself in you. So if you wanted the most powerful and simple practice to free yourself of judgment, just move through the world namasteing everyone. Drop from your judging mind into your pure soul self-heart. From there, from that divine in you, just do Namaste. I'm anchored in my divine heart, bowing to your divinity, recognizing that there is no separation between the divine in me and the divine in you. So whenever you're feeling a little bit with someone, just Namaste. They don't even have to know you're doing it. I mean, whether you're Indian or not Indian, Namaste is something we all do these days. COVID made it very popular. So just go through your life Namasteing. A question? Great, yes. Thank you. So we have one question that's come in advance. I don't know what time it is, but
15 minutes left.
okay.
Well, 10 minutes.
Okay, so we'll take one question, and depending on how long it is, we will have time for another one. I'm okay, I'm good, thank you. From yesterday's talk, what is the best way to hold the thought? If I am feeling down, how do I change this thought? So recognize that thoughts themselves are really just fluctuations in the chemistry and the electricity of our brains. We pay a lot of attention to thoughts. We think, oh my God, they are who I am. It's this big thought. But if you actually watch your mind, what you'll realize is thoughts are like bubbles. If you've ever played bubbles as a kid or with your kid or with a grandchild, how long does a bubble last? That's actually neurologically how long a thought lasts. They're bubbles. They're just bubbles. But we get attached in the drama and in the story, and so we keep creating the same bubble over and over again. So if you're feeling down, just notice it. Close your eyes and allow it. See it really as a bubble. Like, okay, here is a bubble of being down. And as it reaches sort of the center of your mind's eye, watch it burst. And imagine that you're blowing bubbles on a sunny day. So the bubble bursts. And now you can see for a moment sort of prisms. Because remember, the bubble's got some wet suds in it, so it's a little bit of liquid. So when the bubble bursts, there's always this moment. Before the drops come down to the ground, there's this moment of prisms, of color in the air, where the bubble burst. And allow yourself to just notice these beautiful prisms. And then notice that you have the power to blow another bubble. What bubble do you want to blow? Why not? Why not blow a bubble of joy? If you doubt that you have power over your mind, I'm going to do a very, very simple experiment. Right now, eyes open or closed, it doesn't matter. In your own mind, I want you to shout the word love. Just keep shouting it in your mind. Okay. Is there anyone who couldn't do that? So everyone, since no one raised their hand, I assume everyone was able to do that, right? You could do that. Okay. Now, I want you to shout hate. Just shout it over and over again in your mind. Okay. Could everybody do that? Great. Now I want you to shout hungry in your mind. Okay. Success. So, it's actually not difficult. We really can create thoughts. We've just created 3 completely different thoughts. Now what happens normally is our whole energy gets involved in it. So if there is a thought of hate, I start to tell myself a story around it. Then I get lost in the drama. But realize they're just bubbles. They're just bubbles. They're as quick as every time you were saying that word. That's all it is. And then you get to decide what's the next one going to be. So if you find that you're feeling down, first of all, embrace it, accept it. There's nothing wrong with any emotion. This is really important. There's no thought that's wrong. no emotion that is wrong. We're not trying to repress or suppress anything that we feel or think. We're simply learning how not to be slaves to it. So we're just learning that we have control. We can create in our minds what we would like to create in our minds. If I say right now, you've got an assignment. We won't do it, but let's just say I said, okay, you've got an assignment. In 5 minutes, every single one of you has to recite a poem that you've just written. So just imagine I gave you all pieces of papers and pen and you had to come up with a poem. And you only had 5 minutes to do it. Well, you'd think about it. Your minds would be focused. You would do your best. Some would do it more easily, some would have more of a difficult time, but you would do it. We are able to direct our minds. We just don't do it. I'll end with one of my favorite stories on that, and then if there's another question, we'll take another quick question lastly. And it's a story of a man who goes to a meditation retreat. And it's one of these very, very intensive meditation retreats. And he says to the master, he says, my mind, I try to meditate, I'm trying to just love God and think about God and feel God, and my mind just keeps wandering. I cannot stay focused on God. And so the Guru says, follow me. And he takes the disciple to the river. They're on the banks of a river, and he walks into the river with him. And he holds the disciple's head underwater. First, the disciple thinks, oh, this is nice, some Eastern form of baptism. But the Guru doesn't let him up. And now the guy's thinking, oh my God, did I say something really wrong? Is he trying to drown me? And the Guru doesn't let him up. And the man is now panicking. He cannot breathe. Struggling, trying to get up, fighting against the Guru's hand. Finally, just before the guy passes out, the Guru pulls him up out of the water. And he's, as you would be if you were on the verge of drowning. And the Guru says to him, so what were you thinking about down there? The guy's like, thinking about? I was thinking about a breath of air. I couldn't breathe. And the Guru says, when you want God, like you wanted that breath of air, your mind will stop wandering. So it's all about really what we want, what we're creating. We have the ability to work with our minds, but do we? If there is another quick question, we will take it. Otherwise, we will break for lunch. Okay, great. We'll have a beautiful, beautiful lunch, a beautiful afternoon. We've got sound healing here at 5. I encourage everyone to come. The power of sound is very, very sacred, very ancient, very powerful. It's an energetic wave that travels in and impacts very deeply the energy of our own physical bodies as well as our energetic bodies. So it's a wonderful opportunity to have that. And then we will gather again in the evening after dinner at 7:30 for satsang.